been some fascinating uses of time loops in games. You've got your classic roguelike loops, as seen in Dead Cells and Slay the Spire, but there are also other interpretations, like uncovering the ancient time mystery in the Forgotten City, looping for efficiency until you're practically speedrunning, like in Minute, the literal loops found in the gothic fantasy Loop Hero, and failing to save doomed London over and over again in Frostpunk, a city building loop that feels deliberately designed as my own personal hell. In most of these games, to loop is to ultimately fail. There have been some excellent games that have messed with this idea, looking at you Hades, but a recent example of undermining the loop can be found in this year's excellent RPG In Stars and Time. It uses time looping as a clever game mechanic, it uses it to tell an emotional and heartfelt story, and it also uses it as a bit of cheeky meta-commentary about the medium of games. So let's get into that. So quickly, here's the setup. In Stars and Time is a time-looping RPG that follows an adventuring party on the last day of their journey. They need to fight through the castle, defeat the big bad king, and break his curse that has frozen the entire kingdom in time. You play as Siffrin, the quote-unquote rogue of the group, and after being crushed by a giant boulder, they are the one who discovers that they have the time-looping ability.
It's not just a boulder, it's a rock!
And not only are they living through the same day, but they also remember every loop too. There are turn-based fights, the humour is bursting with personality and puns, and the characters are all so adorable I want to give them all a big hug. But the core of the story explores the consequences that Siffrin must face, now being able to experience the same day over and over again. There'll be times where you're forced to loop, like dying in a fight for example, but there'll also be times when you want to loop to solve puzzles, to reach new areas of the castle, or for story reasons. Looping serves a couple of video gamey purposes. The castle is a layered and complex puzzle, and solving it means looping as many times as it takes to solve. There are also more world building opportunities, since the player will be looping through it over and over and over again, and wow, is this game dense with world building and lore. And of course you'll loop when you die, like being obliterated by the king for example. But hey, no biggie, looping is a safety net, so now you have more experience and knowledge, you can just try again, no problem. You learn from your mistakes, but what if your character also remembered too? Well, we can see it played out over the game's 20-hour runtime. Siffrin sees the looping as a sort of blessing at first, but that unfortunately doesn't last long. In the same way we would skip through dialogue that we've seen before at the casual click of a mouse button, Siffrin impatiently rushes conversations along. When one theory to break the loop cycle doesn't work, we feel Siffrin's growing desperation and frustration. Are you getting tired of defeating the same enemies over and over again? Because Siffrin feels the same way, and we see this through noticeable changes. Their reactions to events, their dialogue options, even their profile picture. Watching a character slowly unravel is unnerving, and I can't help but feel responsible. Usually in games, the character's death belongs solely to me, the player, but in Stars and Time, Siffrin shares every single death. Every single one. And just for perspective, my end of game loop count sits at a lovely 200 loops. So yeah, that's a lot. But what makes things interesting is that Siffrin isn't just stuck in a time loop, they're stuck in a game loop. To play games is often to take part in excessive repetition. I'm playing the fantastic El Paso Elsewhere right now, and yeah, excessive definitely describes my experience. It's a puzzle box, and I'm going to work out how to beat it through multiple tries. In Stars and Time understands this and messes with that sentiment. Having Siffrin remember loops is the game recognising essentially what it is, and that's fascinating, if kind of creepy and harrowing. It's in this way that the game has more in common with the existential dread of something like the Stanley Parable than a classic RPG. Both use the invisible structures and control systems of the medium to tell an interesting story. They both understand the structure of games and actively disobey them to mess with us, and to mess with player agency, and the helpless character too. It's very meta, and it feels like a very fun gotcha moment. But at the same time, I'm also crying at this little dweeb in a wizard's hat caught in a perpetual cycle they cannot escape from. And it is emotional. Even with its meta-commentary and dense fantasy time-looping story, In Stars and Time feels incredibly personal. A person who has to live the same day over and over and over again in forced isolation? Does that sound familiar to anyone? Siffrin's frustration and desperation is one I instantly connected with. In Stars and Time is ultimately a story of self-reflection, and its main message teaches us to be strong in the face of uncertainty on both a cataclysmic and personal scale. It's only when Siffrin realizes this that the loop will break. When playing in Stars and Time, you're not looking to solve the loop, but rather fulfill its purpose. And I think that's an important distinction, and why this game is one of my favourite games of 2023.